All right, so the next empire that's going to fall as a consequence of European imperialism, and again, one of the dominant civilizations prior to 1750, is going to be the Ottoman Empire. And you will see, by the way, a lot of similarities between what happened with China that we dealt with earlier, and then what is going to happen with the Ottoman Empire. And just to start off here with some similarities, one, both China and the Ottoman Empire felt like they did not need to learn from the West. Now, China completely and totally seals themselves off. They're like, look, you guys don't have anything that we could possibly want. The Ottomans, they're going to be a little mixed. They'll take some things, you know, more things than China will. And some of this is also simply because they're next door neighbors with the Europeans. But you're going to see that they will not, and they're not going to be able to seal themselves off quite as much as the Chinese did. But at the same time, they're also not going to take everything that the Europeans have to offer. They're going to be far more selective. Both are going to be able to avoid direct colonial rule, but were diminished. Neither China nor the Ottoman Empire is going to be directly ruled by the Europeans, by a singular country or by multiple countries. Instead, they're going to be heavily influenced. While they won't be a colony, they also aren't going to be independent. Both are going to attempt defensive modernization, but again, like you saw with China, spoiler alert, it's going to be a little too little, too late. Um, or at least with the Ottomans, it's going to be a little too late, and it's going to be a little too selective. Like they still are continuing to cherry pick some of the things that they want from Europeans. Both are also going to suffer a split in society between modernists, those that want to take the step forward and Europeanize and Westernize, for lack of of a better idea, and then those holding traditional values. Those that, like, for example, in China, were concerned that the reforms might hurt the feelings of the landholding social classes. You're going to have something similar going on here with the Ottomans here as well. So, to give you again, because it's been a little bit since we've dealt with the Ottomans, in 1700, the Ottoman Empire was still strong at the center of the Islamic world. However, by 1900, honestly, before that, it's known as the sick man of Europe. The ironic thing here is, and you want to put this down next to number one, is that Western Europe, right here next to number one, Western Europe was concerned with the decline of the Ottoman Empire as early as the mid 1800s. Western Europe was concerned with the decline of the Ottoman Empire as early as the mid 1800s. The ironic thing here, if you remember with the Ottoman Empire, is that the Europeans were having puppies and kittens as the European Empire is, as excuse me, as the Ottoman Empire is growing, where they're going to have a different type of puppy and kitten when the Ottoman Empire is starting to decline. Because by the time the Ottomans are declining, the Europeans have things that they need, conveniences that they desire from the Ottoman Empire, and that the fall of the Ottoman Empire, or at least its alteration, could cause certain European powers some concerns, to kind of say the least. Again, just like with China, the Central Ottoman state had been weakened. I mean, it's going to be fragmented just like everybody else. Sorry, just like China, where provincial authorities and local warlords gain more power, limiting the government's ability to raise money. Again, just like with China, the power of the central government is just simply being fragmented. It's going out to other groups of people. What also doesn't help is that their economy was hit hard by Western developments. What happens here is, and this is not going to be like China, The Europeans achieved direct access to Asia. So there's two things. This is kind of important. You want to put a star here by A underneath number 4, and then you want to put down here next to A underneath number 4 that previously Ottoman strength was based on it being a trade crossroad. Previously, Ottoman strength was based on it being a trade crossroad. If you think about the size of the Ottoman Empire, in order for the Europeans to go from Europe to anywhere in the East, anywhere in Asia, they're going to have to traipse through, and even good parts of Africa, they're going to have to traipse through part of the Ottoman Empire. So its strength, not only politically, diplomatically, but also economically, is the fact that you had all of this trade going through back and forth through the empire. There's a lot of wealth going back and forth through the empire. And you start to see it decline as soon as the Western Europeans get ocean going steamships, which is going to cut travel time down quite a bit. But really, the nail in the coffin is going to be the digging of the Suez Canal. So now, rather than going and sending steamboats all the way around Africa to the India through the Indian Ocean in order to get to India, or then going into the South China Sea in order to get to China, or in order to get to Southeast Asia, here with the digging of the Suez Canal, they can just go straight through the Mediterranean and through. This is going to mean that one, trade's going to speed up, and B, since trade is speeding up so much, we don't need to continue these land trade routes that even with the Europeans sailing around Africa, these land trade routes had always still kind of continued. Well, now because trade is going so quickly, we don't need to have those. And as soon as those land trade routes go, you're going to see that the Ottoman Empire kind of follows almost immediately afterwards. On top of all this, because the Europeans have industrialized, cheap European manufactured goods harm the Ottoman artisans. Because again, why go and have an artisan make you something when you can just simply make it cheaper and faster with machines? Governments here, because they don't have the amount of money coming in, and because they are fragmenting their power and losing their ability to tax and to raise money, the governments came to rely on foreign loans to finance economic development efforts. So, more and more, and you don't really see this within China, but more and more, the Ottomans are simply going to become dependent upon those foreign dollars. And ultimately, here, they had reached a state of dependency on Europe. You want to go ahead and put a star here by number 5, and then we'll have a note that is also going to go here next to number 5. The little note here I want you to put down next to 5, because you're going to see the Ottomans are not unique in this dependency. You want to put, please, here that other areas directly controlled by Europe will suffer the same fate. And in both China and the Ottomans, technology had stagnated and was surpassed by Europe. So this dependency on Europe is not going to be something unique to the Ottomans. Absolutely every single place, and you'll deal with the consequence of this here in a couple chapters when we get rid of empire. All of these places are going to have some type of dependency upon Europe. With the Ottomans and with the Chinese specifically, if you remember, these guys were top dog. They were far superior and more advanced than the Europeans were. However, their technology is just simply going to flatline. and their technology is flatlining and continuing to flatline at the same time that European technology is growing at a freakish rate. And the problem is that neither the Ottomans nor the Chinese are going to grab onto this European technology as it rises. Now, just like the Chinese, the Ottomans are going to attempt some ambitious reforms, but these will go considerably further than the Chinese. And it's going to go further for a couple reasons here. One, they don't have an internal crisis on the same scale as China. They don't have the population boom. They also don't have the political poo storm that's going on like China did. There's no internal upheaval at the core of the empire. So there's nothing like the Tapping Rebellion or the Boxer Rebellion or anything like that that's going on here within China. And guys, before you flip, you want to put a star here by A and B. I actually need you, I'm going to have you put a star by the whole list, but I know that you have to flip after B. So just put a star here by A and B, and then we'll kind of, go forward here. Rulers didn't have to deal with the explosive population growth. I mean, the population of the Ottoman Empire is actually decreasing by this point because the empire is starting to slowly shrink. So we don't have the population explosion, the problems with a population explosion like China does. On top of this, here, the rulers were Turkic and Muslim, not foreign like the kin. So the nationalist movement is not also going to be a nationalist movement that goes against the government as well. And as soon as you're done highlighting that, you want to go ahead and put a star there by C and D up at the top of page 4 as well. After 1839, we have far more reaching reorganization measures are going to are going to emerge. We start to see the beginning of an extensive industrialization and modernization process. We also have the acceptance of the principle that all citizens are equal before the law. Um, this is going to be important kind of internally. You want to put down here next to B. And by the way, we're going to also have something that goes next to C, so you might want to go one side, other side. But next to B underneath number 3, you want to put down that this got rid of religious distinctions. This got rid of religious distinctions, and then put in parentheses, i.e., Muslim privileges. We also end up having a tide of secular legislation and the creation of secular schools. And again, this is going to be a little bit important later on. So you want to put down here next to C underneath number 3 that this challenged the Islamic character of the state. This challenged the Islamic character of the state. And even go ahead and, because it is going to be important to us later on, go ahead and put a star by C here as well. So supporters of the reform saw the Ottoman Empire as a secular state. The reform is going to create a new class of writers known as the Young Ottomans, who urged the creation of a constitutional regime. Again, I think the Ottomans, far more than the Chinese, are starting to look at the European political situation and trying to copy it in a lot of ways. Have a lot of the same political institutions and a lot of the same, political, social, civic, and economic rights that the Europeans have. They're trying to get that for themselves here as well. In general, this Islamic modernism is going to accept Western technology and science, but not its materialism. So you want to go ahead and, because this is going to be unique, you want to put a little star here by C underneath number 4, that they kind of, again, they still are in that habit of cherry picking, that they want the good that Europe has, not also what they see to be as the bad. Eventually, here we have a new constitution being accepted in 1876 that does limit the Sultan, that's the monarch's authority. Unfortunately, Again, just like with China, there is something that is going to take this reforming spirit and just simply knock it on its bud. And ultimately, the Sultan is going to almost immediately suspend it. Like, hey, this is great, but no, we're not doing that. Opposition to this is going to coalesce around a group known as the Young Turks, who are these military and civilian elites. They go and they advocate for a militantly secular public life, like they want to remove religion from absolutely everything, have the Ottoman state be a secular state, not be a Muslim state. And they also want to shift to thinking in terms of a Turkish national state. Again, emphasize the ethnicity, not the religion of the people at hand. Eventually, here, and in fact, you want to put down here next to B underneath number 6 that after 1900, there are growing efforts to define a Turkish national character. To define a Turkish national character. And you're going to see that for them, that is not going to include religion. So, in order to be a member of the Turkish state, you don't also have to be Islamic. Eventually, here towards the turn of the century, we have a military coup that's going to give the Young Turks real power. Unfortunately, again, all of this is a little too late, and the Ottoman Empire is going to be completely disintegrated after World War One, and we'll kind of deal with more specifics with that um, next chapter. We're going to go from having the Ottoman Empire to having Turkey, and a lot of the areas that had been part of the Ottoman Empire right up until the end, you'll see will kind of be, sectioned down, will kind of be divvied up to some of the Allied powers like England and also with France. The outcomes here are going to be pretty important. So you want to go ahead and just put a big star by this whole section. I mean, there are a lot of ways that we can compare China and the Ottoman Empire. I mean, by 1900, both of them were semi colonies. They're not directly ruled, but are definitely going to be influenced indirectly and also directly by the Western powers. Both are going to give rise to new nationalist conception of society. Remember, the Ottomans are more anti-foreign, where the Chinese are anti-foreign, but they also see their own government as being part of those foreigners. So again, Chinese nationalism is going to be a little bit different. Eventually, here, the Chinese imperial system is going to collapse in 1911. The Ottoman Empire is going to be able to hang on until the end of World War One. So they're going to be able to hang on until 1918. I mean, 7 years, but 7 years. The Chinese revolutionaries are going to reject Confucian culture more than Turkish leaders are going to reject Islam. Chinese revolutionaries are going to see that these old ways of behaving and thinking are what caused their demise. Where with the Ottomans, they still understand that Islam is an important part of them, but it's not the only part. So the Chinese nationalists are rejecting the old ways, and the Turkish nationalists are just they would just want to play down Islam. They don't want it to be as big of a thing as it had been earlier.